Hey everybody, welcome back. So 2024 is here, and that can only mean one thing. The annual spring bird migration is just around the corner. Before I head back out into the field and start filming some fun bird and wildlife content, I decided that it'd be a good idea to pause and use these dark and cold winter months to do an inventory on my gear and decide what I'd be using for 2024. That said, I think I'm ready. I already went through the whole exercise and I believe I've chosen all of my equipment. But as anyone who's ever built a kit can tell you, it's fun to talk through all your stuff and the reasoning behind it with other interested parties. I actually tried to talk to my family about this stuff, but in between snores and through very glazed over eyes, they kindly reminded me that I have a YouTube audience and they urged me very nicely just to tell you instead, so here I am. I hope you find this helpful as you build out your 2024 kit, and please feel free to ask me any questions that you might have down in the comments. Also, I'd love to just hear about your kit. What did you choose to use this year? Let everybody know in the comments down below. Alright, so before I show you the stuff, let me quickly share with you my rationale for choosing things in general. I like to start by grabbing just a sheet of paper and listing out all of my needs into one gigantic list. Then in another column, I list out all my known obstacles from my current setup and any potential obstacles related to the type of work that I'm going to be doing. From there, it's like a game of Tetris. I try to select as few pieces of gear as I can that will meet all of those needs and minimize as many of those obstacles as possible. If I've already got a piece of gear that can fulfill my requirements well enough, I'm typically not going to buy a new one. I'm only ever going to opt for an upgrade if the new gear is going to significantly reduce weight, materially improve image quality or keeper rate, or remove major obstacles that my other gear can't. With that said, let me talk through what my high-level photography needs are this year so that my gear sources are going to have some kind of context and make sense. To start, I need a main body that I can use for both bird and wildlife photography and portrait photography, as those are the primary two types that I do. For wildlife, the camera's going to need to shoot fast bursts and have excellent autofocus. High-resolution sensors are also a plus, as cropping is sometimes necessary for smaller birds, and I want to have as much detail in the images as possible to work with. I'm also going to need a secondary body that's going to serve as a comparable backup to the first. I'm often going to carry that second body with me to limit lens switching when I'm out in the field or on safari, for example. Third, I'm going to need a camera that I don't mind taking out with me when I'm out with the family. I love taking pictures of the kids at the playground and that's not what I mean. Let me rephrase that. I love taking pictures of my kids at the playground and on amusement park rides and at birthday parties, so having a body that's small and easy to bring anywhere is a must. Fourth, I need a variety of lenses that are going to support wildlife, portrait, and family photography, as well as a few other niche scenarios that I might shoot, like macro or landscape. Fifth, I film for YouTube, so I'm going to need a way to capture high quality video and audio of myself, birds, wildlife, and the surrounding scenery. Finally, I'm going to have a few accessory needs, like a tripod for example, and who could forget a bag for carrying all this stuff around? In fact, I want to start with the bag I selected, so let's look at that first. Once again, I've selected the Shimoda Designs Explore version 2 bag. I used it for the majority of last year and I have to say, it's spacious, it's comfortable, and it's durable. There are a million reviews out for this bag. It's been out for a while, so I'm not going to go into all the specs in this video, but I will say that one of the features that I plan to take advantage of a little more this year is the ability to swap out core units. I have the one called the large DSLR core unit, and I'm primarily going to be using that one for the majority of my shoots, but on days where I want to do portraits or carry less, I'm likely going to swap in a smaller one like the medium mirrorless core unit and just roll out. This is what my current core unit looks like when it's all packed up, and the Shimoda bag makes it easy just to load up the bag, zip it up, and go. Okay, so let's move on to the cameras. For my main body, I'm sticking once again with the Nikon Z9. I've had this camera since it was released and it's aging like fine wine. Nikon's released multiple major firmware updates for this camera, and I can proudly say that the Z9 is even better than it was when I bought it. The 45 megapixel sensor is the perfect size to enable some reasonable cropping for birds. It can shoot 30 frames per second in RAW, and I rarely even need that much. And to top it off, the autofocus system is world class. I thought it was breathtaking when I first bought it, but with the addition of the bird autofocus subject detection in that 4.1 firmware update from last year, it's elevated the camera to a whole new level for me. I have no doubt that I'm going to be using this camera for a long time. For the secondary body, I actually have a new addition to the lineup, and I'm recording with it right now. It's the Nikon ZF. If you recall, last year, I was shooting and filming with both the Nikon Z6 II and the Nikon ZF-C. Now, both of those cameras are in my top tier list of favorite cameras that I've ever owned, and honestly, selling them was very bittersweet for me. What sold me on the ZF though was that I could use this one single camera to combine the best features from 3 of my 2023 pieces of kit into one. The Z6 II had a fantastic 24 megapixel sensor, and my favorite thing about the camera was the quality of the images that it was producing. They were simply fantastic, and the ZF takes that exact same 24 megapixel sensor, and with the help of the X-Speed 7 processor, which by the way is the same one as in the Z8 and the Z9, it manages to render even better images that I can only describe as having some kind of additional magical character to them. I also love the Z6 II for video too. The only shortcoming I actually ever felt was as a YouTuber. I missed having that fully articulating flippy screen, and I had to lug around this heavy external monitor to use in the field, and it was kind of annoying. The ZF solves this problem though by being just as good, if not better, at video, but with that flippy screen from the ZF-C. Speaking of the ZF-C, I loved that camera too, and I used it as my everyday camera for taking out with the family. It was small, it was lightweight, and it also looked cool. People would actually really stop me and compliment this camera all the time, and it was pretty fun. They loved the form factor and the retro film style body. As much as I loved it, there were 2 downsides for me though, and they were the battery life and the crop sensor. The ZF solves both of these problems. Not only is the battery life leaps and bounds better, but it uses the Nikon standard battery and, as I mentioned before, it's full frame. And the ZF actually sports an even cooler looking body than the ZF-C, and it feels more solid and more professional in the hand. But it's also still compact enough that I don't mind bringing it everywhere for my everyday photography, my family photography, etc. And on top of all of that, the ZF has an autofocus system that's powered by that X-Speed 7 processor, which is leaps and bounds above the Z6 II's X-Speed 6 processor. The ZF also brags the very best in-body stabilization of any camera that Nikon has ever made, even beating out the Z9. I actually tested it out at a Christmas event last December at this local amusement park near where we live, and the shots that I was getting handheld kind of blew my mind. All of this is to say that when I realized that I could combine my second camera body, my YouTube video camera, and my everyday camera into one body, the ZF was just a no-brainer. Okay, moving on to the next thing. For those outings where I can't bring a full kit, I also picked up the DJI Osmo Pocket 3. This little pocket video camera is incredible. With its 1-inch sensor, it can record in 4K at 60 frames per second, and honestly, both the video image and the audio quality are amazing for the tiny little size of this camera. And true to its name, it can fit in my pocket, which makes it the perfect tool for a one-man YouTube channel. I had the Osmo Pocket 2 last year, and I also loved that camera. In fact, I took a little hot shoe adapter and combined it with an adapter like one of these and mounted it on the top of my Z9 for some great first-person perspectives of me shooting where you could see the lens and see the bird, and this adapter really came in handy. I actually probably wouldn't have upgraded it, but I accidentally slammed the gimbal head into my car and I broke the damn thing, so here we are. But I really like the Pocket 3, so I guess I don't regret it. And along with the Pocket 3, I'm also using the DJI Mic 2 wireless mic set for video. These are hands down the best wireless mics that I've ever used. They pair natively with the Pocket 3, and with the included transmitter, you can also use them with your cameras and your phones as well. One of the things that I love about these is that you can set them to record backup audio directly to the transmitter automatically, which is a godsend for filming out there in the field. I can't tell you how many times I've shot all day only to find that my audio was bad or lost because I did something stupid like plugging the receiver into the headphone jack or just not plugging it in all the way or something. They can also record in something called 10-bit audio, which means they can basically take in a lot more audio data without clipping, and they also come with really good noise and wind reduction on them as well, so really great for just being out in the field and recording YouTube videos. Now for aerial footage, I'm once again sticking with the DJI Mavic 3. It's an incredible portable drone with a long range and a dedicated remote control. While I do love this drone and the video that it can produce, I do think it was a bit pricey. I have a bit of buyer's remorse, and I think the size and the weight are just a little much for my taste, but it is what it is. If you're looking for a more affordable option that can take nearly as good of a video, but it's cheaper or more lightweight, I'd say check out the DJI Air 2S instead. Okay, so let's move on to lenses. For birds and wildlife, I am stubbornly sticking with my 500PF and my 300PF. I recognize that Nikon has put out some incredible new lenses for the Z mount, but I just can't bring myself to part with these two yet. The 300PF is a tiny miracle machine, allowing me to shoot at 300, handheld, almost weightlessly, in very low light conditions. It's wonderful, it renders a great image, and I love it. The 500PF, my baby boy, is also really lightweight for what it is. It renders an incredible image, and it still holds its weight against some of the newer glass, as far as I can tell at least. If I were to add one lens to my kit within a reasonable budget this year, I think I'd actually go for the 180 to 600 on the Z mount. I like the flexibility of the zoom, and I love that it's a native lens. And by the way, if anyone has shot with that lens, I'd love to hear how you like it in the comments down below. Now, if money was no object though, of course I would go for the 600 f4 that they just put out. In fact, Nikon, if you're listening and you'd like to send me that $15,000 lens to play with, I would not say no. Please, Nikon, please. In terms of video lenses, I've been just using one, the 24mm f1.8 by Viltrox, and I actually really like it, although I'm normally not that big of a fan of third-party lenses. Actually, let me clarify. I actually don't like the image that it produces for stills, but for video, it has a real character to it that I do quite like. Okay, so next I want to talk about my choices for portrait lenses. The first two are the Z mount 50-1.8 and the 85 1.8. I've had both of these lenses for years, and they are optically two of the sharpest lenses that I've ever owned, and I love them very much. The bokeh and the fall off from the foreground to the background is so smooth and lovely on both of these lenses, and in fact I've had the f-mount versions of both of these lenses, and I can say very much that I like the Z-mount versions much better, and I think they are significant improvements. I use 50 both for groups and when I want to capture more of the environment, but I do like the 85 for taking headshots. Next up, I've got a real gem, the f-mount 105 1.4. What can I say about this lens other than that I love it? I picked it up immediately last year when Nikon heavily discounted it, and it turned out to be well worth it. The bokeh is beautiful, and this is one of those lenses that just has some kind of unspoken magical character to it. If you're a portrait photographer and you don't have one of these, I definitely consider one. It's definitely more of a character lens though, in that it's not super clinically sharp, especially wide open, but a lot of the time I love that. I actually rather enjoy the character and the magic of it, and I think it really enhances the image, and it's just got a quality to it that I just really love. Okay, finally, I'm going to be using the 135 1.8 Plena. I've just started getting my feet wet with this one for portraits, and so far it has been really pulling its weight as one of the best portrait lenses I've ever used. The bokeh on it's perfect, and the lens is definitely deserving of its own name from what I can tell so far. It's one of those lenses that's clinically sharp, but it has real character to it, and I really like it. I actually even used it with the Nikon Z9 auto capture feature the other day to take some really beautiful video of some backyard birds, and I wasn't disappointed. If you'd like to see a review of the Plena with auto capture, let me know down in the comments below, maybe I'll make a video on it. Okay, so moving on, I wanted to quickly also share what I use for landscape and macro photography. For most landscape, I'm just gonna shoot on the 14 to 30 f4. I love how compact the lens is, that it's got a flat front element that's compatible with standard filters, and that the image quality is really good. I took the 14 to 30 with me to Maine back in 2022, and I was hard pressed to take it back off my camera everywhere I went. I used it for landscapes on the Rocky Coast, lighthouses, you name it, I loved it. For basically everything else landscape, I'll just put the 24 to 120 on, but I'm gonna talk about that lens in a minute. In terms of macro, I've got here the 105 2.8 macro lens for the Z mount. One of my goals this year is to use this one a little more. I really want to try a focus stack with it. You know what, actually I think it would be fun to make a video all about hunting for interesting macro subjects. I did really put this lens through its paces in 2022 on a trip to Northern Virginia though. I stayed at this Airbnb, and outside there was this enormous butterfly bush. It was swarming with all kinds of butterflies and hummingbird moths, and I found the 105 just to be a real treat to shoot with. I was out there all day just trying to take as many pictures as I could of these hummingbird moths. I think the lens is the sharpest macro lens that I've ever used, and I honestly feel guilty that I didn't use it much last year, so I'm going to change that in 2024. Okay, almost there. On to the last of the lenses. Here are my two everyday lenses that I take with me when I'm out and about with the family. The first, as I mentioned before, is the 24-120 f4. If I'm not mistaken, this is Nikon's most popular selling lens of last year, and for good reason. Optically, it's wonderful, and the 24-120 focal range is perfect for just about any type of general everyday shooting, from landscapes to portraits, that you could possibly want to do. And I'm constantly just slapping this on my ZF when I go out, and I've got everything that I need. When the 24-120 is a little too big though, and I want to go minimal, my secondary go-to is the 40mm f2. For the size and cost of this lens, it really punches above its weight. Not only is 40mm one of my unexpectedly favorite focal lengths, but the images coming from this lens are actually pretty superb. Almost to the point where it's annoyingly too good for its size and cost, if that makes sense. Like, why did I pay all of this money for these other lenses when this one is just so damn good annoying, if that makes sense? Okay, so before I wrap up, I did just want to talk about a few miscellaneous accessories that I really like and I'll often carry with me out, as I'm out on day trips and maybe longer outings. First, I've got here some items for cleaning. I like to carry a rocket blower, some sensor swabs, and a microfiber cloth just in case I run into a dust issue. There's nothing worse than getting on site, seeing dust in your shots, and just knowing that you're gonna have to spend all day editing them out later. Second, I love this strap mount by Peak Designs. If I'm carrying a second body, I like to put this on my bag strap or my belt for easy retrieval. In fact, I couldn't find this thing the other day, and I was out shooting a small private wedding ceremony, and I ended up having to use 2 camera straps. And if you've ever tried this, you know how much it sucks. It doesn't work. There's no efficient way to shoot this way. You've either got to crisscross them, making it impossible, to bring one of them up to your eye, or you strap them both on the same shoulder and they're both just clanking together and bumping into each other. It's horrible. Don't do it. But with this mount, you can just use one strap and then have the freedom to grab the second body as needed without fussing with them crisscrossing and all of that mess. I love this thing. Okay, so that's all I'm going to go through for the gear, but I do want to say one more quick thing. Starting today, there's a little event going on around the entire world. It's called the Great Backyard Bird Count. It's happening from the 16th to the 19th of February. If you're interested in birds, this is an awesome way to contribute to bird research and conservation, and you can participate. If you want to, all you have to do is go outside, go outside, get a little sun, and count as many birds as you can see or hear, even if it's just for 15 minutes, and then record them in the apps eBird or Merlin. I plan to participate as well this weekend, so I'm going to document it. I'll post a video about it in a few days, and I guess I'll see you then. So until then, thanks for watching. I hope this helps you make your choices for 2024, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, everyone.